पास there are two scenarios. एक scenario है जहाँ system है और एक scenario जहाँ system नहीं है. So let us assume for argument's sake, आज हम assume करते हैं कि हमारे पास collections का system नहीं है, या अगर system है तो system उतना robust नहीं है जितना होना चाहिए, या इतना अच्छा नहीं है जितना होना चाहिए. तो मैं अभी के लिए assume करता हूँ कि हमारे पास system नहीं है, या system थोड़ा टूटा हुआ है. राइट तो इस हमारा जो सिस्टम है जो हम क्लाइंट्स को हम रेकमेंड करते हैं, उस सिस्टम के अंदर 4 स्टेप होते हैं. सो आई विल एक्सपैंड स्टेप नंबर 1 हियर फर्स्ट. तो वन थिंग दैट वी ऑफन रेकमेंड इज दैट एक हमारे पास एक बंदा होना चाहिए, या तो कलेक्शंस के अंदर या अपना अकाउंट्स के अंदर. एंड कुछ कंपनीज में, जैसे हमारे कंपनीज के अंदर भी हमने क्या किया, दैट वी हैव बोथ कलेक्शंस आल्सो एंड वी हैव अकाउंट्स आल्सो. सो अकाउंट्स इज ऑफ कोर्स द वंस हु आर जनरेटिंग the bill, and collections are the people who are following up, along with stakeholders and brand managers and account managers and all of that as well. So both people are there. Collections also, accounts is also there. Now, of course, one thing that is a must, which I assume everyone on this thing will have, is you must receive a purchase order. और जो आपका invoice बनेगा वो purchase order के साथ ही बनेगा, because once you have a purchase order, now you have a legal document, and the goods that you ship, they must have, of course, the invoice attached to it. And the invoice must carry all your terms and conditions. So this is, of course, the most basic thing, and something that is step number 1. So step number 1 has actually now happened. Your goods have happened, and now there is, payments are to be followed up, payments are to be collected. So let's expand now this particular step. I hope everyone can see the screen and what I'm actually presenting. I hope everyone can actually see it. I'll actually zoom in a little more right now. Awesome. So I'm zooming it more. Yeah, I'm zooming it more now. So action step number 1. So the day after the shipment is actually, shipped out and the goods have actually gone, and this is great for domestic, right? So right now I'm looking at domestic, we're not looking at export. So we send an email on day 1, the day after the invoice has gone, confirm that the invoice was received and send proof of delivery. तो एक तो delivery जो आपने किया है, उसका जो delivery चालान है, जो invoice है, जो receiving है, जो GRN good receive note जो है, this is sent along with everything else in an email saying that, please confirm that the invoice was received. Then step number 2, and this is all right now happening on email. So जो collections का बंदा है, जो accounts का बंदा है, I recommend that अगर हर office के अंदर आप एक बंदा बैठा दें collections के अंदर, वो जितना पैसा आपको बचाएगा ना, मतलब उसकी जो सैलरी है उससे आपको मतलब 50 गुना ज्यादा बचा के देगा. ये मैंने खुद अपनी कंपनी में देखा है. हमारी कंपनी के अंदर 4 अकाउंटेंट हैं, उसके अलावा भी कलेक्शंस का बंदा है, और ये कलेक्शंस का जॉब यही है जो मैं आपको आज बता रहा हूँ. और सिंस आपके ज्यादातर पेमेंट डोमेस्टिक में फंसे हैं, अगर आप ये वाला सिस्टम यूज करेंगे, एंड if you start using the system, you'll have a lot of good results. Right. So action step 2, like suppose now आपके payment terms हैं. What are your payment terms like? Type in the chat box, what are your payment terms like? Are they 30 days, 45 days? What are your payment terms? Type it in the chat box. 75 days. Wow, Sunil, we should work together, man. I wish I had people who gave me 75 days. Awesome. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Against before my invoice, 60 days, 30, 60, PDC of 30, very smart money. That is why you have the money, because you're taking PDC. Very, very good. Very, very good. Agar PDCs ho sakti hain, to nothing like it. 45 days, right? One thing I recommend, जिन के terms यहाँ 60, 70, 80, 90 दिन के terms हैं, people who have, 60, 70, 80, 90 days, how many of you are actually registered under MSME? If you can just type in, if you're registered under MSME Act, just type in MSME. Kamal, 6 months PDC, wow. तो जिन के पास MSME है, just type in MSME. MSME Act जो है, इस Act को पीछे जो पास दिए गए हैं, and the Act and this power, the more powers that will come in MSME is very, very important. So whoever doesn't have MSME, right? Whoever is not registered on MSME, the first thing you do, अगर third को आपकी markets खोल रही हैं, जैसे भी है, the first thing you do is you go and get MSME registration. मतलब आप सोच रहे होंगे यार MSME तो time pass है, MSME से कुछ नहीं होता. My number one client right now is Coca-Cola, right? My number one client in my gifting company is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola के जो terms हैं वो है 90 days, right? जब उन्होंने बोला कि your terms are 90 days, right? What if you don't fall under MSME category? So so micro, small, medium, right? So Lakshay, what is the total investment in machinery in your organization, Lakshay? When you mentioned that you don't fall under MSME, because MSME is falling into, I guess MSME is helpful for exporters also. We'll come to that as well. And and the thing is, MSME can start from machinery as little as 20,000 and can go up to as much as, or it can go even much higher, even more than, even more than 5 crores of plant and machine. They've actually exceeded that even further. So the point is that MSME is a great tool. So I'll come to that. I'll come to that as well. Okay. So the thing is, if you are eligible for MSME, ask your consultant and go and take MSME registration, because MSME is such a thing that we have forced companies like Shell के साथ 120 दिन का payment terms था. हमने अपना MSME certificate उनको भेजा, documentation भेजा, and we said that boss, MSME के अंदर आपको 45 दिन के अंदर payment करनी है. Otherwise there is, there's much more interest and everything else. So MSME is great, right? So anyone who doesn't have MSME registration, or if you have a doubt in terms of, MSME, in terms if your plant is already too big, maybe what you can also do is float a second company where you have lesser machinery and still become eligible under MSME certification. So there are many ways. Don't say that boss, either I'm too big or I'm too small, तो है ही नहीं. मतलब 20,000 रुपए की भी मशीनरी है, तब भी आपको माइक्रो का मिल जाएगा. And if you're too big, maybe you can even look. Exactly, Rakshit. Thank you. I was under the impression that the limit is now 250 crores. So that is the turnover limit. Plus, of course, there is also the machinery value. And I've known companies whose turnover is really high, but they have also floated a second company. They've floated another company with lesser machinery so that they fall under MSME. MSME is a very, very powerful tool. Okay, so let's not get into these things right now, and we'll discuss all of that as well. So it's more in terms of machinery. So all I'm saying is that a lot of people will fall under MSME category. So use that as a tool. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about this other steps. Okay, so now come to action step number 2. So when your payments are falling due, so suppose 45 days is your payment terms, right? So as a lot of you said, 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, 90 days, 7 days before that day comes. So let's say 38th day ko, your collections person again sends a reminder, hey, payment is falling due in 7 days. 7 दिन के अंदर आपकी payment due पड़ रही है. I hope everything is okay. I hope everything is fine. I hope our payment is going to come on time. So this is a step number 2. It's a reminder, like Airtel, if some of you on Airtel, some of you have various services, even from there you get all these mails. Now, step number 3 is 1 day before due date. Like suppose today is day 44 and 45 days ke aapke payment terms hai. So day number 44, you again send a reminder saying tomorrow is the due date. I hope our invoice is processed. Because otherwise क्या होता है कि जब 45 डे के बाद जब आप फॉलो अप स्टार्ट करते हैं तो वो बोलते हैं यार जी आपका तो इनवॉइस खो गया, आपका इनवॉइस गुम हो गया, आप फिर से इनवॉइस दे दो. So all of these mails that you're sending, ask for a receiving back, ask for a reply saying yes, 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 and lage raho until you get these replies back from them. Action step number 4, which we come to lower here, it's 1 day later saying that I hope our payment was processed. Ab day 46 ho chuka hai. I hope our payment was processed. Kindly share details of our payment, etc. You're asking them to respond back. So that is your 4th email that's actually gone. And action number step 5 is 1 week later. Payment is overdue. So reminder number 1, and it's very important that you number these reminders. And it's very important that you don't do this on WhatsApp. Like काफी हद तक मैं देखता हूँ कि लोगों को लगता है यार SMS भेज दो, WhatsApp भेज दो. Email documentation is very important, because email, when there's an escalation, if this has to go into a legal process, etc., it's very, very important to have those emails. So mention reminder number 1, reminder number 2. जब आप within the organization escalate करेंगे, suppose अभी आपकी dealing है purchase manager के साथ. Suppose currently you're dealing with the purchase manager, but eventually you have to escalate the matter to someone senior in the company, maybe a senior VP. I'll tell you a story about how my payment was stuck in Paytm and what I did and who I sent the mail to. I'll come to you on that story as well. So this is the easy part, right? This is where you're saying, okay, 1 week is due, reminder number 1, reminder number 2. All of this is the easy part. Okay, so we're all clear on this particular part. Now we come into the slightly more places, where now things are getting stuck. So things are not happening, the emails have gone, either acknowledgement is not happening. So now we get into the escalations, right? So escalation number 1 actually happens 10 days after the mail has, the payment is due and the first mail is actually gone. So you make escalation number 1, which is a phone call. And this is 10 days after due date saying, hey, our payment hasn't come in. Escalation number 2 is like now email number 2. So email payment reminder number 2. And this is going 2 weeks after due date saying, hey, this is reminder number 2, payment ka kya hua, payment hasn't come. So you're actually asking, for them as well. Escalation number 3 is again a phone call, saying that, hey, you said your payment is going to come, and take a commitment, take a micro commitment. If they said that payment is going to come on this date or whatever, you take that thing, you write it down in your diary, and like, a bank guy, जिसका interest उस day पे due है, आप उस दिन उनको phone करके बोलोगे कि भाई आपका check आना था, क्या हुआ? Now, escalation number 4, and this is the matrix that I said a lot of my companies are actually, using, and it's being very, very successful for them, is personal visit number 1. Now, this is a guideline that we're giving you. This is a guideline which has worked. This is the guideline that has worked. Currently, even in this lockdown period, we have collected 65 to 70% of all our payments are right now in my bank. बैंक मैनेजर फोन कर रहा है, सर आपको लोन चाहिए, ऐसे यार लोन नहीं चाहिए, अभी तो साला बैंक में इतना पैसा पड़ा है, खुद समझ नहीं आ रहा कि क्या करने का है. So we are using this even now, even during the lockdown we're using this, right? And my bank balance hasn't looked better than ever before. लोग बोल रहे हैं कि यार lockdown खुल जाएगा तब पैसे मांगेंगे. Boss, lockdown जब खुलेगा ना, the whole world will be asking for money. पैसा मांगने का टाइम अभी है, पैसा मांगने का टाइम तब नहीं है, क्योंकि तब पूरी लाइन लगी होगी, and then it'll be like यार सेठ पैसा नहीं है, बता यार क्या करें. So the thing is, be asking for your money even now. Even now, I was with a company before this, and we were chatting, and they saying, "यार हमने तो सोचा है कि नहीं मांगना चाहिए पैसा." I said, "Boss मांगो, अगर due है, you must ask." So okay, escalation number 4 is personal visit. It's 4 weeks after due date, because अगर आपका pressure नहीं रहेगा ना, अगर किसी के पास 100 रुपए है, today think about from your perspective, अगर आपके पास भी सिर्फ 100 रुपए है, and आपको उस 100 रुपए को अपना divide करना है, तो आपका attention वहीं रहेगा जिसका pressure सबसे ज्यादा है. And this pressure can't be about, right now it cannot be, it is about relations, right? It is about, like last time I spoke about empathy. Last time I spoke that, say that, I understand that, right now you're under pressure, but look at my position. Look at my position. I have labor that has to be paid. I have rent that has to be paid. I have interest that has to be paid. I have a family that has to be fed. I have 6,000, 7,000 employees that are working, whose families are being fed. मैंने किसी का पैसा नहीं काटा, मैंने किसी को काम से नहीं निकाला. Get that empathy and just say, please give me something. अगर आपका 50 रुपए भी ड्यू है, तो आप 10 मांगो, 20 मांगो, PDCs मांगो. Just start getting something, because pressure has to be applied with empathy, right? Pressure has to be emotional pressure. It is not the time for डंडे वाला pressure right now. But अगर आपको लगे कि बॉस कंपनी की नियत खराब है और अपना बहुत और इश्यूज है, तब आपको रिजॉर्ट करना पड़ेगा in all those things as well. So personal visits is going to be important. It means मतलब काफी हद तक I have seen that मेरा एक क्लाइंट है जो लॉजिस्टिक्स के अंदर है, वो अपने जो अकाउंट मैनेजर था, अकाउंट मैनेजर को बोलता है, भाई जाके रिसेप्शन पे बैठ जा. He says, अगर तुझे अंदर नहीं आने देते तो गेट के ऊपर बैठ जा, पर तू उठेगा नहीं जब तक तू कुछ लेके नहीं आता. टाइम ऐसा आ रहा है और टाइम ऐसा आएगा कि आप लोगों को भी ऐसे स्टेप्स लेने पड़ेंगे. तो अगर आपका कलेक्शंस का बंदा है, या अगर आपका अकाउंट मैनेजर है, या आपके अगर कंपनी से आप किसी को एलोकेट कर सकते हैं, money is going to be very, very important. So you have to do personal visits, and these personal visits, have to be escalated, and more of that has to be done. Now, MSME Act, escalation 5, of course, because a lot of, my companies and a lot of the people I deal with are under the MSME Act. Attach a copy of the MSME Act and send its implications and everything else. Even the most radio companies, I don't want to take the names, but we have some companies who are consulting, big multinational companies, but unki kya hai na, boss niyat kharab hai. And with them, we use this a lot, and we're able to get the money out. Sometimes they say, yaar, can you change the bill? We don't want to, be non-compliant and all of that. But I'm just saying that this is one step that is actually there. I know there's some comments coming in, I'll address those comments also. But let me also come to step number 4. So mota moti, right? This helps, and is step ke andar hi zyada kafi had tak things will get resolved. But it's possible that sometimes things will not get resolved. It's things possible that people will say that boss karna hai jo kar le, hum payment nahi denge. So the thing is, at this point, you got to do, letters from a lawyer. You got to do, formal notices from the lawyer. Sometimes a letter from the lawyer itself is okay. Like that is enough to just get them to say, okay, I will process your payments. Formal notice, from the lawyer. Again, it's a super way of, getting things moving. And if it's an Indian company, I know a lot of you mentioned domestic. If you send them a notice for liquidation under section 434 for liquidation, you can be rest assured that they will take action and work on their company, right? Domestic companies, especially if a private limited company, there's a lot of information that can actually come in from portals like Zoba Corp, etc. So if you use those portals, you will get a lot of information, from those particular portals, which will give you a lot of information. So this is as far as the domestic piece goes. Now, I know some of you are there, from the international, and you have, those questions about the international side. Now, in national, I have 2 questions, right? One is, do you have ECGC coverage? So some of you asked about, the portals. So there is, I think it's called Zoba Corp. That's the one. I'll just type in there. So Zoba Corp, it'll give you the entire balance sheet. मतलब 199 रुपए के अंदर आप बंदे की पूरी balance sheet निकाल सकते हो, where you will be able to see everything. And that's one. There are so many more like this. And this is for India as well as abroad. So even when you're working with companies overseas, at least do some investigation in terms of what are their financials, really looking like. So some of you have ECGC coverage, which is great because ECGC will come in and help you, right? And if you don't have ECGC coverage, it's almost like, going into a situation and saying that I don't have medical insurance, but I'm sick. Now what? ठीक है? मैंने medical insurance नहीं लिया, अब मैं बीमार हो गया, अब बताओ क्या कर सकते हैं? So now you're in a hard place, right? Now you're in a hard place. So if you have ECGC, thing, that's great. You approach the body, with your problem, and they will help. So it's very, very important, to have ECGC coverage. Now, if you don't have ECGC coverage, okay, now what are the things that you're going to do? Because some of you might be in the situation where we didn't take ECGC coverage. I'm not sure why that coverage wasn't taken. Because basically, ECGC coverage costs you nothing. It costs you, what is it, like 0.15 cents, like in terms of percentage terms, it's like nothing. It's like 0.15%, right? And sometimes people say, boss, time nahi tha, isliye shipment nikalni thi, pressure tha, bhej diya. Ab aise times pe abhi yaad aayega, but why this has become so very important. So, okay, what do you do if you don't have ECGC coverage, right? So you have, of course, you can send them, countless emails. Emails sometimes will do nothing. WhatsApp, a lot of global companies are not even on WhatsApp. You can make, phone calls, may or may not work. I know payments of mine that are stuck in Russia, and I'll tell you what I actually have to do in places and markets like that. So we now, and this is, very, very important, social channels and, things like, Google reviews and Mouthshut reviews, go onto their social channels, and there also you can start posting about what this company is all about, right? If you go to their Instagram, if you go to their Facebook, if you go to their LinkedIn, and even in places like this, if you start posting that, okay, this is a buyer, this is a company जिसने हमारे पैसे नहीं दिए, be careful. You can have reviews on Google, Mouthshut. I know there'll be a lot of reviews that'll even happen on platforms such as, export specific platforms, and people will know, and bad news travels. So if you actually start posting stuff about these guys, they're going to come back and say, hey, listen, tell me what is the problem, okay, why, and what do we need to do? How do we start this conversation? I know people who've actually approached foreign chambers of commerce, and they've actually told them that, hey, listen, there is a problem. This is a buyer. He is a buyer who is a rogue buyer, a fraud buyer. It actually helps. So if you go to these people and you tell them that, hey, these are all the problems that we're facing with this particular buyer, it also works. We had a company in Russia who was defaulting on our payments. Now, Russia is a very difficult market. For some of you dealing with Russia, a very difficult market. In the end, what actually happened is I had to have a friend, and a very powerful friend, actually visit them and say, hey, listen, what is the problem? Why are you not making those particular payments? So, sometimes you have to even resort to something like that. Personal visit, for whenever personal visit and travels happen, that's another time. But the other thing is you can also approach an ECGC equivalent body for a blacklist. Now, this has worked out very well. I have a lot of Chinese suppliers. I know Chinese suppliers jinka maal India mein bhi phasa hai, jinka maal overseas bhi phasa hai. China ke paas 50% market share hai. Of that $2 trillion, 50% is happening through China. And China ki काफी shipments hain jo phas bhi jate hain. Very rarely do they go without, an ECGC equivalent insurance. But they write to those bodies and they ask them for a blacklist. So उस country के अंदर, जिस country से आपका buyer है, जिस country से आपका, the main client is there, you approach that company and say, hey, this was the confirmed purchase order. This is, the goods that have been shipped. This is the proof of shipment, etc., etc. They're not paying, and we've taken all these steps, but nothing has happened for us. So hence, we would like to approach for a blacklist, right? And this is very powerful. Like I said, if you just use even social channels, posting reviews, posting stuff on Google, these guys will start and having a conversation. I'm not sure how many of you have started doing it, but it's something that you should actually do. So this was just in terms of some of the steps that you can take, on the payment side.